Welcome to the 2020 Ontario Realtor Party Speaker Series, brought to you by the Insurance Bureau of Canada. Now here's our host, ORPSS CEO, Tim Hudak.
Hello and welcome to the third episode of ORPSS Ontario Realtor Party Speaker Series. I'm your host, Tim Hudak, coming to you from Toronto. We've got a great program lined up for you today. Listen to this. The minister responsible for the Trust in Real Estate Services Act, the Honourable Lisa Thompson herself, will be here, and the Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Doug Ford. Both of them are here to talk about the pandemic, what it means for real estate, and very importantly, how do we get the province down the path to economic recovery? But first, getting our economy back on track in a post-COVID-19 Ontario is an issue dominating the minds of many decision makers across our country. Here in Ontario, OREA has put a plan on the table to kickstart our economic recovery using housing as a locomotive to pull our economy back on track. Here to tell us more about OREA's plan and how it's landing with the MPPs at Queen's Park is Ontario Realtor Party Committee Chair, Bradley Mayor Harmon. Welcome to the show, Bradley.
Thanks so much for having me, Tim.
All right, Bradley, good to have you on. Let's get into this report. So it was launched in late September and is focused on housing and economic recovery from COVID-19. Tell the audience exactly what is in that report.
Glad to. In September, OREA released Rebuilding Ontario, a framework for recovery. It's our plan to help Ontario dig its way economically out of the hole that COVID-19 has put us in. The paper itself is a partnership between OREA and a think tank called the Strategy Corp Institute of Public Policy and Economy. The report has over 15 recommendations, but its central message is simple. We believe housing can be the engine that drives our economic recovery from this pandemic. Housing got our economy back on track during the financial meltdown in 2009, and it can certainly do it again.
All right, Brad, you mentioned 15 recommendations. That's a lot of thinking, but let's do the highlights. What are sort of the big topics you're putting on the table? And when you're sitting across the table, virtually, I guess, how exactly are they landing with the MPPs?
Yeah, so we've prioritized 3 of the recommendations. In September, local realtors from across Ontario hosted over 70 meetings with MPPs to discuss them. Our goal is to convince policymakers to put those policies in either the fall budget, which we expect to come very soon, or in the spring. One of our ideas to get our economy moving again is a 1-year home renovation tax credit. It would be very similar to the Harper tax credit from 2009, and it would give people who are spending a lot of time at home a chance to do that home office renovation or make their home more accessible for an aging parent. At the same time, the credit would get people spending in the economy again while creating jobs.
Totally get it. Debbie and I used that program in the past, and it would get a lot of spending, make some good points, home office, place for grandma. Okay, the other part I want to ask you about is housing supply. So that is the big issue that dominates any conversation around real estate these days. A lack of inventory in the markets, whether in a big city or a small town. It plagues Ontario. That could drive prices up, and that means home ownership is further out of reach, particularly for young families. So what exactly, Bradley, does the report have to say about getting more homes and more choice in the marketplace?
Certainly that was a huge focus of our report. It's on increasing housing supply. So to start, we're urging the province to put in place a temporary land transfer tax holiday. It would provide a big incentive to baby boomers and others to list their home to take advantage of that tax break. OREA has also called on the province to implement opportunity zones to incentivize development in underprivileged communities, as well as rezoning for growth in non-urban and Northern Ontario to build more homes. The only way we make homes in our province more affordable and get the economy going again is by taking bold steps to boost construction and housing development.
Bold steps to produce more homes, more construction, more spin-offs. Great work to you and your team, Bradley Mayor Harmon. I know realtors are leading the way when it comes to putting ideas on the table to get our economy back on track and more people on payroll. So if folks watching at home want to get more information, they want to see the full list of 15 ideas, how do they go about doing that?
Absolutely. We urge people to read our report at www.orea.com/COVID recovery. And we encourage people to share this on social media as much as possible. And also talk to your MPP. Again, our message is clear. Housing can be the engine that drives Ontario's economic recovery from COVID-19. We can create jobs. We can get people spending in the economy again. And most importantly, we can help communities that need it the most.
Bradley, thanks so much for doing this, and thank you for your leadership this year. Outstanding report.
Thanks so much, Tim, for having me, and have a great day.
You bet. Good seeing you again. Coming up next, I will talk to the Minister of Government and Consumer Services, Lisa Thompson, about the new Trust in Real Estate Services Act and a big change that realtors have been waiting for over a decade. Right back after this. Home ownership. For Canadian families, it means more than a roof over your head. It's about financial security, a place to raise a family, being part of a community, and a neighborhood to call your own. For our economy, housing is a pillar of strength. We've been through tough times before. Housing led our recovery once with creative solutions that worked for the people. It can do it again. Getting people back to work, driving growth, supporting local businesses. Housing is an economic engine. Realtors have a plan to put it to work to benefit all Ontarians. Our plan will get more homes on the market, get people spending in the economy again, offer support to communities that need it the most, and contribute to a strong economic recovery for all Ontario. You can read our plan at orea.com/COVID recovery. Welcome back. Minister Lisa Thompson first got elected in the beautiful riding of Huron-Bruce in 2011. And since then, she's been a leader in the Ontario PC caucus and a powerful voice for small town Ontario. Minister Thompson was put in cabinet by Premier Ford, and we've been really lucky to have her serving as Minister of Government and Consumer Services, where she oversees the regulation of the real estate industry and a lot more professions. Working with OREA, Minister Thompson has led an historic update to the Trust in Real Estate Services Act, which has delivered on an issue that many of our members have been waiting for more than a decade: personal real estate corporations. Minister, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Tim. I'm really happy to be with you today.
Well, it's great to have you back. You were at our conference last year, the big news, now the bill's passed. We'll get to TRESA in a minute, but something else I want to share with the audience, because I've seen you in action. You are sitting at a very prestigious table, a committee within government called the Jobs and Recovery Committee. So for those at home, it's basically like the internal working group of ministers charged with leading Ontario's response to COVID-19. How do we open up? What rules are in place? So number one, thank you for being there at the center of the storm and steering our province forward during a tough time. Secondly, just tell those watching at home, what is that experience like in a senior elected role at that center table, responding to the day-to-day challenges of a global pandemic?
Tim, that's a really good question. And I thank you for that, because honestly, I don't ever remember a greater demand of my time. But do you know, the effort that I would say from Premier Ford through our entire cabinet and caucus, our government, has never been more tuned in, and it's unconditional. Our sleeves got rolled up right back early March. March 12th is the day that I remember very clearly. And I have to tell you, with even all that said, the demand, the numerous cabinet and caucus meetings, the Friday night 11:30 p.m. briefings, the list just goes on and on. There's no other place I'd rather be, because I feel that I was on the ground, acting as a conduit, bringing the right players together at the right time, of which many came from the realty sector in Ontario. And it was so important because we've brought forward together the right policies to help us navigate these turbulent waters. And because of the input that we were getting from the ground, I am incredibly confident in the decisions that we made. And, on the flip side, the pandemic shone a light on what we can do together in terms of being very dexterous and pulling our industry sectors together and making sure that we move forward very thoughtfully and tuned in to what we need on the ground. I find that this whole experience has been energizing because what we could do in terms of a government working with sectors in a very efficient way.
Wow, that's impressive. I guess no surprise that you find it energizing. We appreciate the outreach. It's great working hand in hand with you, Minister, and your team on the real estate issues. And I know you have an incredible work ethic. I've known you for over a decade now. We served together, of course, in 2011 when you were first elected in the House. But your private sector work before that, a champion of agriculture, rural Ontario. Your dedication has been impressive as an MPP and in Queen's Park and also back in your riding. You use the term roll up your sleeves. Let me ask you about that because I've been really impressed. Despite having known you for a long time, like you really rolled up your sleeve when it came to TRESA. We'll get to that in a second. That's sort of big news. But I want to ask you too, for our audience at home, what are the priorities you work on as minister? I mean, Tarion, what else is on your list?
Well, you know what? We had an incredible year. We brought TRESA forward, of course. We all are very happy in terms of how that concluded and, up to the big announcement just last week in terms of the regulations that came into force. But you know what? I think the biggest thing that characterizes how I've approached my role as Minister of Government and Consumer Services is that we're listening. We're listening and we're taking action. And obviously, something that matters to your membership would be Tarion. Our government made a commitment to look into Ontario's new home warranty system because we heard that the system was broken. But in order to make the right changes, we had to take a step back and survey the entire situation. And most of all, listen so that we could move forward in such a manner that consumer protection was paramount. And you know what? It's been so important. In one way, TRESA and the Rebuilding Consumer Confidence Act went hand in hand because it's so important for the health of our sector that we foster trust and confidence in new homes and our realty sector. And I really feel good about the efforts that we've done in terms of the Rebuilding Consumer Confidence Act, as well as the manner in which we've moved forward to reposition Tarion based on consumer priorities and what we heard, because consumers need to feel confident in their warranty provider. And we've worked tirelessly to rebuild Tarion from the ground up, quite frankly, and also address recommendations by the Auditor General. So if I may, Tim, I'll just go on to share with you that we've taken action to separate the regulator of builders from the warranty provider for new homes. And we've also followed through with the order my predecessor issued earlier last year on the disclosure of executive and board compensation. And then to segue over to Bill 159, the Rebuilding Consumer Confidence Act, we are promoting higher quality new home construction, and we're improving, if you will, the single provider model for warranties and protections. In essence, what we're doing is providing a better dispute resolution and investigation process, as well as increasing staff training where it counts. And again, it's all about protecting the consumer.
It's great to hear because for far too long, Tarion was a lopsided deal. It didn't work for consumers. So thank you for bringing those changes to raise the bar. All right, let's bear down on TRESA here. It's groundbreaking legislation. It will usher in the highest professional standards for real estate anywhere in North America. It was great working hand in hand with you on the bill and the regulations since. And I bet you're proud. We are that it passed the Ontario legislature unanimously, 91 votes to 0 against. Exactly. All right, so tell us a bit about your work to get it passed and what is it going to mean, Minister, to the realtor on the street, in your opinion?
Well, I have to tell you, Tim, honestly, when I think back, my work began when I was first elected to Queen's Park. And I remember time and again, realtors coming from across Ontario to Queen's Park to advocate and ask for a modernization of the framework, if you will. And whether it was in my office at Queen's Park or home in my constituency, local realtors from Belgrave and Walkerton, Kincardine, and beyond would consistently share a message that we received at the provincial level as well. And it gives me great pride, I'll say, that we can prove that we're a government that not only listens, we take time to understand and work with our sector experts to make sure that we've landed in a really good place when it comes to trust in real estate services. And under the new rules, I am so happy that as of last week, real estate professionals are now able to incorporate and be paid through personal real estate corporations, like all other professionals, so many other professionals in our province. And it's something that has been asked for some time. And quite frankly, your sector deserves this.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you for being a champion. You're right. Big part of that bill, real estate salespeople and brokers can now incorporate. It's an issue that realtors have been advocating for a decade. And I want to say thank you through you as well to a couple of members of your PC caucus, Bob Bailey, Minister Todd Smith.
Yes.
They played a big role in getting the ball rolling. But your minister, you're the one that brought it down the field over the goal line. You were the one that got the job done. We're so thankful for that. Walk us through a little bit. Like, why did you put this on your priority list? We get it, but what appealed to you as a minister to say, let's get this job done when it comes to PREX?
Well, again, what we need to be doing is supporting the people in our communities across this province who are out there on the ground, providing jobs, supporting our sports teams, promoting communities that we're proud to call home. And realtors in Ontario deserve that same professional opportunity as many other sectors in this province. And I say realtor with great satisfaction, because over and above being able to incorporate, Tim, salespersons and brokers actually can use advertising terms such as real estate agents and realtor finally in advertising on business cards and on their real estate signs as well, to better reflect today's services that they provide to consumers across the province. And we did a lot of consulting, and this again was something that was asked for across the province. And I'm very proud to say that we listened and we landed well. And I want to give a shout out. I'm standing on the shoulders of an amazing team that I have here at the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. They know who they are. But I also want to give a shout out to my critic from the loyal opposition. Tom wanted to work with us because, again, he very quickly recognized the relevance in terms of the thoughtful policies that we brought forward. And we were willing to work with him and broker a presentation, if you will, that reflected the realities of today's world from a real estate sector. And because of that, even the Lieutenant Governor remarked that she couldn't believe that 91 out of 91 MPPs voted unanimously to see this through. And so I tip my hat to all of you who through the years had a consistent voice, and you treated all of us equally to make sure that we all understood the importance of moving forward with TRESA. But I have to tell you, Tim, we're not done yet. I'm looking forward to working on phase 2 of the regulatory reform still coming down the pipeline this fall. And that second phase will strengthen professionalism and ethical practices across the sector by updating our code of ethics and implementing disclosure requirements to better protect consumers. And we're also going to be updating the authority and powers of RICO as well.
Well said, Minister. And let's talk a bit about the authorities of RICO, because I think for too long, people saw that it was too much a slap on the wrist when some really egregious things happened. I just want to say, I think it's awesome that you recognize Tom Rakocevic, the New Democrat critic, and Mike Schreiner from the Green Party did a really good job too. It's really cool to see how members of all parties worked with you to get this legislation through the House. It wasn't the usual sort of, fighting heads, talking heads. It was very productive. So thank you for doing that and recognizing those members. Okay, let's talk a bit about RICO. So what's next with TRESA? You talked about real estate corporations, the advertising rules. Fantastic, long time coming. So how about specialty certifications, and also tell us how RICO will be a much more effective regulator when it comes to establishing high standards?
Well, thank you for that. And I just want to remind everyone that this is the first time in almost 20 years that there has been a comprehensive update of the rules that govern real estate brokers, brokerages, salespersons. And the changes, as you can well appreciate, are very significant. And so, again, we heard loud and clear that people were concerned with some of the the smattering of bad actors, if you will, across the province. And so we're going to be working with the sector and coming forward with an initiative to update code of ethics. We heard that in the initial debate with TRESA, and we are going to walk our talk and make sure that everyone can be proudly called a realtor in the province of Ontario, because we want to make sure that professionalism is strengthened, and to that end, out of respect for all of the amazing realtors in this province, we feel by coming forward with ethical practices across the sector, we will strengthen the position that realtors have in our communities at home, and most importantly, will tie that into updating the authority and the powers at RICO as well. It's been necessary. Again, we've listened, and most importantly, we're taking action.
Minister Lisa Thompson, thank you so much for your leadership. Thank you for being with us today. Thanks for your friendship to real estate across our province, and congratulations on your efforts and that of your team to making Ontario a North American leader when it comes to real estate professionalism.
Well, thank you so much, and certainly encourage all of the professionals in the real estate sector here in Ontario to speak with advisors to determine whether incorporation is a good fit or not for their businesses. And we look forward to continuing to work with you in our next phase of bringing that, securing that professionalism and code of ethics for your sector.
Well said.
Have a good day.
Thank you. And coming up next, nobody gets into office thinking they're going to have to manage a 100-year global pandemic. Premier Doug Ford has had to lead our province through this incredibly difficult period in our history, and we're lucky for it. So next up, the Premier himself is going to tell us about his work and what it's like leading a province through COVID-19. Welcome back. Premier Doug Ford has led Ontario through one of the most challenging periods in its entire history. And I know from speaking with the Premier regularly that throughout this pandemic, he's been working 7 days a week, 14, 16-hour or longer days, focused on keeping Ontarians safe and getting our provincial economy back on track. I'm going to speak to the Premier about his leadership during COVID-19, about our economic recovery, and also the Premier's take on the provincial housing market. But first, I'd like to invite the sponsor of this episode, Kim Donaldson, Vice President Ontario from the Insurance Bureau of Canada, to welcome the Premier and say a few words.
Good morning. My name is Kim Donaldson. I'm the Vice President Ontario of the Insurance Bureau of Canada. It is my great pleasure to be here with you today to welcome Premier Doug Ford. I'd like to thank OREA for organizing this speaker series, and I look forward to hearing the Premier's remarks. We are living in extraordinary times. The COVID-19 pandemic has altered life as we knew it, but it has also given us an opportunity to see how we can overcome adversity if we all work together. Extraordinary times call for extraordinary people, and Premier Ford, you have answered the call. Your steady leadership and commitment to keeping people informed has gone a long way to maintaining the health and safety of Ontarians. I, for one, am not surprised, having grown up in his neighborhood I have come to understand Premier Ford as someone who cares deeply about Ontario and who listens and has a common sense approach to ideas that put everyday people at the center of any policy discussion. Thank you, Premier. So many people and businesses have stepped up during this crisis to lend a hand and retool. Allow me to put a small plug in for my own industry. The pandemic has hit many people hard, especially in the pocketbook. We agree with the Premier that we all have to do our part to get to the other side of the pandemic. Our members recognized that early on. Back in April, they stepped up to support consumers and businesses during the COVID lockdown, providing over $1 billion to date in auto insurance consumer relief. That is not small change by anyone's measure. Premier, I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say we want you to continue to succeed as you tackle these extraordinary times and position our province for a prosperous future. Thank you for your efforts on our behalf.
Thank you very much, Kim. Well, good morning, Premier.
Good morning, Tim. How you doing?
I'm doing fine. Thank you very much. And you're always out there talking about keeping people safe, keeping our families safe, what we should do to protect ourselves. But you know what? I got to ask you. You've got a beautiful family. How is the Ford family doing, and how are your girls doing?
I appreciate that, Tim. Like every family, you've walked a mile in my shoes, and family is number one in the Ford family's books. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to see them as often, and as like a lot of families, you haven't been able to get together as often. But the four girls and my wife Carla, they're doing great. So thank you. And your family?
Getting through, and thank you very much for keeping opening up the schools. So my girls are so happy back, seeing their friends, playing, learning, seeing their teachers. Really appreciate that as a dad. And I want to ask you too. No surprise to me, you talked about Carly. You talked about the girls. Let me ask you personally: how are you doing, Premier? You're under a ton of pressure. How are things for you on a personal level?
I'm feeling good. I'm like the Energizer Bunny, and it doesn't stop. But you know why I'm good, Tim? People like yourself and other people, the 14.5 million people across the province, everyone's pitched in. We have the heroes out there that I say there's so many heroes, but our frontline healthcare workers and our emergency service folks, they've been incredible. PSWs, nurses, docs, so they've all pitched in. And then I look at the private sector too. When we were scrambling, everyone was scrambling around the world at the beginning of the pandemic for the PPEs. Now we have tens of millions of PPE items being distributed throughout the province and the private sector and the public sector as well. And it's amazing how quickly people changed on a dime. Massive companies, small companies, medium-sized companies switched over to start producing the face mask, no matter if it's the N95 or the surgical mask, the face shields, the gowns, and it's just incredible how we all pulled together in such a short period of time. So I'm very grateful.
Premier, I don't think anyone can understand the enormous pressure that has to be on the shoulders of the man with the top job in the province during the greatest health and economic crisis we've seen in 100 years. I can only imagine when it comes to COVID, you see the numbers go down, you see them bounce up, and you're in front of the media and the public on a near daily basis. How does the Premier of Ontario keep grounded and focused when you're in this incredible pressure cooker?
Well, I'm always grounded because it's hitting you so quickly, so fast, and you have to read and react. But I never read and react without collaborating in consultation with our chief medical officer, our health team. I always based everything on health and science and data. And show, I always say, show me the evidence before we make any decision. And it's never one person's decision, no matter if it's on the health table or myself. We go into cabinet as well and caucus, and there's some real good debates there. They can last up to 4 hours, and everyone has different opinions. And there's a lot of people with their input and their opinion, and I respect that. But at the end of the day, we have to make the right decision. Number one, to keep people of Ontario health and safe, and number two, right beside is the economy, because that affects people's mental health. And there's people out there that put everything they have into these companies, and they're struggling. And it's our job to be there to support them and get them back on their feet.
Early on in the pandemic, a lot of jurisdictions got it wrong. They made different calls about public health and safety. Ontario has got a lot right. There's got to be like 1 million pieces of data, Premier, coming to you at once. lots of different opinions, and you're looking at what's happening around the world. So how do you go about, you and your team, taking all of that data, all of that advice, and making the tough calls?
Well, really, if you want to do the comparators, and I guess the regions, or Quebec is probably the closest when it comes to population. And then we look at regions throughout the U.S. And in the U.S., I don't have to say much what happened there. It kind of turned into a little bit of a disaster, but really, I feel it was because they jumped back into it way too quick. And every region, every state that we looked at, when they jumped in too quick, they opened everything up. They had to go reverse it back and close everything down, and then try to open it up again. So it's just being cautious, listening to the health experts, and again, the science, and working with everyone. And that's what made the difference. All 14.5 million people, the vast majority of the people, were following the guidelines and protocols set out by the chief medical officer, no matter if it was social distancing, self-isolating, wearing a mask. That all plays into what has happened here in Ontario. And I'm grateful we have such a great population, great residents of Ontario here.
Well said. Premier, this is the third year that you've spoken at an AREA event, and we're incredibly lucky to have you joining us here again virtually, but it's great to have you on the screen. At our first AREA conference with you, shortly after you were elected in 2018, you gave a great speech talking about the work that the government was going to do to reduce barriers to housing supply, to make homeownership more affordable for hardworking average families. So 2 years later, Premier, how do you feel your government has delivered on that commitment to homeownership?
Well, I think we've done pretty good. And if you look back at the numbers back in July and August, I know at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a little dip. But what I understand, in July and August, there was record sales, which is great. We have to keep the momentum moving forward and give people certainty. Not only give all our great real estate agents across the province certainty, but give the people certainty that they have confidence to go out there and buy a home, and even if it comes down to buying a rental. A condo opposed to renting. So it's just cutting a lot of the red tape regulations. Honestly, listening to great stakeholders like yourself, Tim, and all of OREA, because we aren't real estate experts. You are, and I'm a strong believer in listening to the stakeholders that know the industry a lot better than someone sitting in the government. And we've taken the lead, and I know the Minister of Municipal Housing, he moved quite a few items forward, and we're always going to listen. So if there's better ideas out there, please send them over, and we'll make sure we implement them.
No, we really appreciate what an open door you've had personally as Premier. You mentioned Minister Clark, Minister Thompson, and others. And in fact, we'd say that with your More Homes, More Choice Act, this has probably been the most pro homeownership administration in Ontario in a generation. And I remember watching you speak on the stage, Premier, in 2018. I've seen you talk about this in the House, and from our personal conversations, you seem really motivated around the idea of owning a home. So let me ask you, what does a Canadian dream of homeownership mean to the Ford family?
Well, I think it means everything to everyone. And right now, I'm a strong believer that yes, we should have affordable rentals, but vast majority of the people want affordable ownership. And rather than putting people into affordable rentals and watch the building, because I'm heavily involved in Toronto community housing, so is my brother Rob, going in there, seeing firsthand there's a difference between handing something over for free versus having skin in the game. If you reduce all the additional fees that the province or the municipalities put on the backs of the folks that are developing these projects, they pitch in a little bit. I'll give you an example. I've had a conversation with a lot of these guys. Say you buy a condo for $700,000 in downtown Toronto. Let's say it's 800 square feet. They're telling me if we get rid of the fees and everyone pitches in, we can get that down to close to 400,000. So that makes it more affordable. So let's knock off all the additional fees. Let's make sure where we give incentives. If we have property, the province or be it the city of Toronto, for example, has property, let's put it back into affordable ownership. And over a 20-year period, the program, and I'm going to simplify this, 5 years to get, if they want to move up into another area, buy maybe a home, that's fine, God bless them. Then there's a cap of 5 years, and then it goes from 10 to 15 to 20, that they'll own it completely and see the profits. But I'm 100% focused on affordable home ownership opposed to affordable rentals. I know we need both, but the average person, their goal is to buy a home, no matter if it's a condo or a little bungalow. And that's our goal as a province, to make it more affordable by getting government out of the way.
No, it's great ideas around lowering development charges, making the fees lower, making public land available. These are all ideas that we've worked with your government on. Thank you for putting those things in legislation. And now we're starting to roll up our sleeves, looking at how we can help with post-COVID-19 economic recovery. I know a big focus of yours, Premier. You're managing the pandemic daily. You're keeping people safe. But you've also made it a priority to say, okay, let's get the economy back on track as well. And our message as an association is that housing can and really should be the engine that can help lead our recovery from COVID-19. So Premier, maybe for those watching at home, how is your government planning to get our economy back on track? And what do you think about housing playing a leading role in Ontario's recovery?
Well, when it comes to the government and housing, it comes really down to regulations. And I don't want to knock our municipalities, but where there's regulations of the federal government, municipal, and provincial. But we need to get moving on approvals as well within municipalities. They'll take forever sometimes. Duplicating EAs, the provincial EA, then the federal EA, that's unacceptable. Why are we duplicating it? Why can't we streamline it? We saved over $400 million of regulations for business last year. Before this pandemic, when we first got elected, Tim, we were 300,000 manufacturing jobs in the hole. And in a short period of time, with the thanks of people like yourself and everyone else out there, true entrepreneurs, we were able to gain 307,000 jobs. That's a big difference. It's really just making sure that you work with the municipalities to cut the red tape and regulations and make it more attractive for companies to go out and build and see a proper ROI. For years, everyone's always hit around MZOs. I've never hit around MZOs. We need to give more MZOs, get approval from the municipalities, cut through the red tape. Let's get these places built. And number one is thousands of construction jobs, but there's a backlog. Our province is going to see over the next couple of decades, and I'm betting it's even going to be sooner than a couple of decades, 4 million more people are going to come into the province here. We're already, I always say 14.5 million people, but it's 14,770,000 people to be exact. And we'll be up close to 20 million people. We're an economic powerhouse in North America. We do close to 400 billion with a B of two-way trade, Ontario alone, with our number one trading partner, the US. So there's $200 billion that we're procuring and buying down in the US. And I always say, buy Ontario, buy made in Canada, made in Ontario. And that's another campaign that we're pushing. But not only that, we have to start changing the scorecards when it comes to government procurement, not only provincially, but municipally and federally. If there's a manufacturing company and they're competing against other places in the world, there has to be a certain percentage that you get if you're manufacturing here in Ontario. You're employing people here. Yes, in some cases, not all cases, may we spend maybe a dollar more or so? Yeah, we can. But what that dollar is going back into our economy, back into the system of Ontario, creating more jobs. But we have to start protecting our own now. Everyone, and then especially you see in the U.S., all you hear is "Buy America." Well, they know we're responsible. We're the number one trading partner to 19 states. We're number two to 9 others, and we're an economic powerhouse. We shouldn't sit back. We're purchasing hundreds of billions of dollars, and we need to make sure that number one, the companies in Ontario or across Canada are competitive. To justify it is critical, because there are some things that we just can't buy or compete if they're making it over in Asia or around the world. I get it. But there's a tremendous amount of things that we can buy. Just think, Tim, if we change the buying habits of people going down the local hardware store or local retail store, if we could change their buying habits even 10%, that's $20 billion. That's tens of thousands of jobs for family members, for neighbors, for friends. And that's what we have to start focusing on. We have the brightest, best people anywhere in the world right here in Ontario.
You know, Premier, I've had the pleasure of knowing you for 2 decades plus through your dad, the Doug Ford Sr. We sat in the legislature together, your brother, Mayor Ford. And one thing that I always admired about you is you enjoy so much interacting face-to-face with people right across the province, looking in the eye. And, you know, I'm the same way, right? I miss the warmth of a handshake, the embrace of a close friend or family, the chance to take my girls to see a Jays game or such. So I got to ask you, like, when do you think this is all going to end, and what can we do to help?
Well, I appreciate that, and you're doing right now. You're doing it, Tim. You're out there. We're working side by side. We're working collaboratively together with the OREA and other agencies in the real estate, and the construction, and manufacturing. And I think it's the highest call of duty per se, is when you want to give back to your community, no matter if it's being running for a local councillor or mayor or MPP or MP. That's the way you can give back. That's where you can make fundamental changes within the government, rather than sit back and complain. And that's how my dad got involved many years ago, when he sat back and complained and yelled and shouted at the TV when Bob Ray was premier. And I came into the house one day, and my mom said, "You got to do something with your dad. He's going crazy. He thinks, you know." When Bob Ray got elected, he thought the communists were marching down the street. We're all moving to the U.S. And I said, "Dad, rather than complain, do something about it." Not only did he step up, guys like yourself stepped up, Mike Harris stepped up, everyone stepped up, and the class of '95 was incredible. What a talented group, similar to ours. We have a lot of talent, not only in cabinet, but I have, as I say, I have 30 other members that could fill in every spot for cabinet and do just as good of a job. So we have a lot of talent there, and I just encourage everyone, get involved, and let's move the cities and the province and the country forward.
Well, let me follow up on that last point, Premier, as we conclude, because I know you got to get back into the legislature there. So the people watching right now, I mean, these are realtors who really love to give back to their community. They could roll up the sleeves type, volunteer, help everybody else. And they also really like it where real estate and public policy come together. So you had mentioned it, running for office. So we had 70 realtors, we counted, who ran in the past couple of years for council, for mayors, for trustees, for MPP. Stan Cho, now, right, broker, yes, realtor, joined your caucus. Right. We had 30 who actually got elected. They love public service. Let me ask you this as our last words on this. Any words from the Premier of our province to inspire the women and men watching today who want to be an MPP, no matter if they're a Conservative, Liberal, New Democrat, or Green, they want to get on council? Some words of inspiration for them.
Well, number one, it feels great to be able to give back and support communities. And the majority of real estate folks I know are so engaged in their community, no matter if it's their local sports team they're helping out, or the Rotary Club or the Lions Club they're involved in. So I encourage them to. And a perfect example was Stan Cho. Stan Cho is a bright MPP that has a very, very good future moving forward. And he's making instrumental changes, working with the Minister of Finance and the Treasury, President of the Treasury. So he's really applying his skills. And that's what we need. We need, number one, a diverse group from all different sectors around Ontario that can bring their knowledge into government and start running the government more like a business, making sure we always respect the taxpayers and make sure that we're coming up with new ideas through technology or lean methodologies to make sure that the taxpayers' money is spent wisely, the most efficient way possible. So I really encourage everyone. And a lot of people like starting at the school trustee level, get their feet wet, and then move up to the council or an MPP or an MP. And if you're especially if you're running as an MPP, I encourage you to run And like you said, it doesn't matter if it's the Green Party, Orange Party, Red Party, or Blue Party. I just prefer you join the Blue Party. It's the right party.
Well, Premier, thanks so much for joining us today. It's awesome to have you back 3 years in a row. I know how crazy your schedule is, especially in the time of COVID. And we really appreciate hearing directly from the Premier about real estate and our members and how they can give back. And let me just say on behalf of OREA, thank you for your calm, cool, and strong leadership during this incredibly challenging and difficult time in our province's history. We're lucky to have you at the helm. Thank you, Premier.
Well, thank you, Tim, and I want to thank you for your leadership and your whole team. I believe there's 79,000 real estate agents. That's 79,000 families and businesses. So we appreciate all your support and your leadership. And again, I want to thank each and every one of you, and God bless you and your families.
Thank you, Premier. Well, that wraps up episode 3 of our OREA's ORP Speaker Series. I want to thank our guests, Bradley Mayor Harmon, Minister Lisa Thompson, and you just heard him, Premier Doug Ford. Next week, our last episode of the Speaker Series, don't miss it. We're going to be joined by Canada's 18th Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Brian Mulroney. I'll ask him about what's going to happen with COVID, American relationships in this new era, and also what he thinks it will mean for real estate. If you haven't registered yet, go to OntarioRealtorParty.com, and don't forget to follow OREA on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn at OREA Info to get all the event updates and all of our announcements. And thank you to our event sponsor, the Insurance Bureau of Canada. And thank all of you for attending. We'll see you next week.